Hello, guys. Here we're again. We're coming again to you, and we are doing the book club now. We just did the consecration to Mary's mantle, and now we're going to do our book club, which is I am Be Holy, for I Am Holy book club. And we are reading the beautiful visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich. Today, she is giving us the vision of the cave of the Nativity, Bethlehem, day 36. The site of the Nativity is attested to by an unbroken tradition dating back to the 2nd century. This plan is a suggested reconstruction of the original arrangement based on the description in the and the present form of the cave's shaded area. Don't really know what that means, but during the centuries there have been many additions and enlargements. Sister Emmerich stated that new grottos were cut in the rock even during the lifetime of our Lord Jesus. The basilica erected by Constantine over the cave in the 4th century and still in use is one of the oldest Christian churches in the world. The 3 oldest shepherds came back in turn and helped Joseph to make the crib cave and its surroundings more comfortable. I saw also several pious women with the Blessed Virgin performing some services for her. They were Essenians and lived in the valley not far from the crib cave, in little rocky cells adjoining one another. They owned little gardens near their cells, and they taught the children of their community. Saint Joseph had invited them to come, for he was acquainted with them even in early youth. When he was hiding in the crib cave from his brethren, he visited these pious women who dwelt in the side of the rock. They now came in turn to the Blessed Virgin, bringing little necessaries and bundles of wood. They cooked and washed for the Holy Family. Some days after the birth of Jesus, I saw a touching scene in the crib cave. Joseph and Mary were standing by the crib and gazing with emotion upon the infant Jesus, when suddenly the ass fell upon its knees and lowered its head to the ground. Mary and Joseph shed tears. I saw Mary at another time standing by the crib. As she gazed upon the child, the deep conviction stole upon her that it had come upon earth to suffer. That reminded me of a vision I had at an earlier period in which I had been shown how Jesus, while still in his mother's womb and from the moment of his birth, had suffered. I saw under the heart of Mary a glory, and in it a bright shining child. As I gazed upon it, it seemed as if Mary were hovering over it and surrounding it. I beheld the child growing and all the torments of the crucifixion inflicted upon it. It was a sad and fearful sight. I wept and sobbed aloud. I saw other forms around it, beating and pushing, scourging and crowning it. Then they laid the cross upon it, next nailed to the same, and pierced it in the side. I saw the whole passion of the Christ in the child. It was a frightful sight. As the child hung on the cross, it said to me, "Oh, this did I suffer for my conception until my 34th year, when my passion was outwardly consumed. The Lord died when he was 33 years and 3 months old. Go and announce it to men. but how can I announce it to man? I saw Jesus also as the newborn child, and I saw how many of the children that went to the crib ill treated the infant Jesus. The mother of God was not there to protect the child, and the children went with all kinds of switches and rods and struck it in the face until the blood flowed. The child meekly extended its little hands before its face in order to ward off the blows. The smallest children were they that stuck the most maliciously. The parents of some even twisted and wrapped the rods for them. They brought thorns, needles, whips, little rods of all kinds, each having its own signification. One came with a very slender rod like a reed, but when it was about to strike the child, the rod snapped and fell back upon itself. I knew several of the children. Some went about boasting in their fine clothes, but I stripped them and whipped some of them well. While Mary was still standing by the crib in deep meditation, some shepherds drew near with their wives, in all about 5 persons, to give them room to approach the crib. The Blessed Virgin withdrew a little to the spot upon which she had given birth to the child. The people did not actually adore, but they gazed down upon the child, deeply moved, and before leaving, they bowed low over it, as if kissing it. It was day. Mary sat in her usual place with the infant Jesus on her lap. He was swathed, the hands and face alone free. Mary had something like a piece of linen in her hands with which she was busied. Joseph was at the fireplace near the entrance of the cave and appeared to be making a shelf to hold some vessels. I was standing next to the ass, and now came in 3 aged female Athenians, who were cordially welcomed. Though Mary did not rise, they brought quite a number of presents, small fruits, birds with red, all-shaped beaks as large as ducks, which they carried by the wings, oval rolls about an inch in thickness, some linen and other stuff. All were received with rare humility and gratitude. The women were very silent and recollected. Deeply moved, they gazed upon the child, but they did not touch it. When they withdrew, it was without farewells or ceremony. Meanwhile, I was taking a good look at the ass. It had a very broad back, and I thought to myself, you good beast, you have carried a great burden. And I wanted to feel it, to see if it were real. I ran my hands over its hair, and it felt as smooth as silk. And
Now came 2 married women with 3 little girls about 8 years old. They appeared to be strangers and people of distinction who had come in obedience to a call more miraculous than received by any previous visitor. Joseph welcomed them humbly. They brought presents less in size than the others, but of great value: grain in a bowl, small fruits in a cluster of thick, triangular golden leaves, which was a stamp like a seal. I thought, strange. That looks like the representation of the eye of God. But no, how can it compare the eye of God with red earth? Many arose and placed the child in the lady's arms. Both held him a little while, praying silently and uplifted heart, and then kissed him. The 3 little girls were silent and deeply impressed. Joseph and Mary conversed with their visitors, and when they left, Joseph accompanied them part of the way. Ah, Could we, like these women, behold the beauty and purity, the innocent wisdom of Mary? She knew all things, but in her humility appears unconscious of her gifts. Like a child, she casts down her eyes, and when she raises them, the Creator, her glance, like a flash of lightning, like the truth, like a ray of unsullied light, pierces one through and through. That is because she is perfectly pure, perfectly innocent, full of the Holy Ghost, and without any reflection on self. No one can resist her glance. These people appeared to have come at least some miles, and that secretly, for they avoided being seen in the city. Joseph behaved with great humility during such visits, retiring and looking on from some distant corner. I also saw Anne's maid and an old manservant coming from Nazareth to the crib. The maid was a widow and related to the Holy Family. She brought all sorts of necessities from Anne to Mary, with whom she took up her abode. The old man shed tears of joy and returned with news to Anne. The day after, I saw the Blessed Virgin and the infant Jesus leave the crib cave with the maid for some hours. Stepping from the door of the cave, Mary turned toward the shed on the right, went some steps forward, and concealed herself in that side cave, in which at the birth of Jesus a spring had welled up. He remained there 4 hours, because some men, spies of Herod, had come from Bethlehem in consequence of the rumor set afloat by the words of the shepherds that a miracle had there taken place in connection with the child. These men met Saint Joseph in front of the crib cave. After exchanging a few words for him, they left him with a contemptuous smile at his humility and simplicity. The crib cave was retired and very pleasantly situated. No one from Bethlehem went there, only the shepherds whose duty called them thither. No one in Bethlehem took any interest in what was going on outside, for in consequence of the influx of strangers, the city was all alive and much buying and selling going on. Cattle was being bought and slaughtered, for many people paid their taxes in cattle. There were numbers of pagans at the city in the capacity of servants. The wonderful apparition of the angels was soon noised among the dwellers of the mountain, valleys, far and near, and with it the birth of the child in the cave. The innkeepers from whom the Holy Family on their journey had received hospitality now came, one after another, to do homage to him, whom unknown they had entertained. I saw that hospitable keeper of the last inn first sending presents by a servant and then coming himself to honor the child. I saw also the good wife of the man who had been so cross to Joseph, and other shepherds and good people coming to the crib. They were very much affected by what they saw. All were in holiday attire and were going up to Bethlehem for the Sabbath. The good wife might have gone to Jerusalem, which was nearer, but she preferred coming here to Bethlehem. A relative of Joseph and a father of that JEANETE'S, who at the crucifixion of Jesus represented a strip of linen to him, had also come to the crib cave on his way to Bethlehem for the Sabbath. Joseph was very kind to them. This relative had heard from people of his place of Joseph's wonderful situation. He came therefore to bring him gifts and to visit the infant Jesus and Mary, but Joseph would not accept anything, although he pawned the little she ass to this relative with the understanding that she might be redeemed for the same amount of money received. After that, Mary, Joseph, the maid, and 2 of the shepherds who were standing in front of the entrance celebrated the Sabbath in the crib cave. A lamp with 7 wicks was lighted, and upon a small table covered with white and red lay the prayer rolls. The numerous eatables represented by the shepherds were either given to the poor or handed around for the entertainment of others. The birds were hung on a spit before the fire, turned from time to time, and sprinkled with the flower of a reed-like plant, which was very plentiful around the area of Bethlehem and Hebron. From its grain, a shining white jelly was prepared and cakes baked. I saw under the fireplace very hot and clean holes in which the birds could be roasted. After Sabbath, the Essenian women got a meal ready under the arbors which Joseph, with the help of shepherds, had put up at the entrance of the cave. Joseph went in the city to engage priests for the circumcision of the child. The cave was clear and put in order. The partition that Joseph had put up the passage was removed, and the ground spread with carpets. For in this passage near the crib cave, the place for the ceremony was prepared. By the way, wait, what's the next week? The circumcision. The priest at our retreat said that the circumcision, and this make total sense. I was like, well, of course, that it was the punishment for
Disobedience, the sin.
the original sin. Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, why did Christ have to get that? But I guess because just like he sacrificed, it was that
Well,
it wasn't
al-
yet in place, and they were human and they did what they do. Go ahead, you were
also he came down to earth to live absolutely everything that we suffer, for everything, to live it all.
true. Yeah.
So I think it was like,
Yeah.
and also for him to be accepted and all that at first, people were very judgy. They still are to this day. So it's like what you got to do, and it's like, to be
And he paid for our sins, so
exactly.
it really only makes sense. But
Yeah.
it's always like, well,
And he didn't die yet. He
Right.
didn't die yet either.
right. And it was the salvation hadn't taken place yet. But anyway, so coming back to the beginning, I love the part where it talked about the basilica erected by Constantine over the cave in the 4th century. So I like that's where it started, because I kept thinking of that when they were talking about it. And it being one of the oldest Christian churches, which we've been talking about, during this beginning of the reading of this book. So, and then the 3 oldest shepherds came back and helped Joseph make the crib cave and its surroundings more comfortable. I thought that was nice. And then Virgin Mary allowed women to help her. Notice she wouldn't let them help her when she was going through the birth, because they were not supposed to witness that levitation and him coming through her with no pain. But then she did allow help. It's like the Holy Spirit was truly guiding her. This says she was filled with the Holy Spirit. So she, so now she was accepting help from these people. So these several women, who were Essenians, they probably were, like her kinfolk. And I was thinking about Anne and why she wasn't here, but I guess, I think the last reading or so, it said that they had visions of it, but they didn't know where they were. So it says they were Essenians and lived in the valley not far. So
yeah, remember, I really liked when he was a little boy. Remember, he would get away from his brothers that were beating on him and that were being mean to him, and bullying him, and he'd go and hide in the caves with the holy women.
That's where
these were them.
and when the people were being hard-hearted, where did he go? Right where he had normally been. I was going to get to that, but we weren't there yet. But either way, so I like this, that these Assyrians were probably some of Anne's kinfolk, and maybe she sent a messenger to them or something to go and help Mary. Or maybe just the rumor that, the baby was born and there was all this light and everyone knew. So, or the Holy Spirit. So I like this, that they own these little gardens and they taught their children in the community. And Joseph had invited them to come because he knew them, he knew them. So, and like you just said, this was their little, this was an area that he retreated to when he was under attack by the brothers. So and then when she said days after the birth that Joseph and Mary were standing at the crib gazing with emotion, and suddenly the ass fell upon its knees and lowered its head as in reverence. They were just standing there. You know how young couples, when they had their baby, they just stand there like, oh, look at the baby. Like, and you could just see them doing that. And then what happens? The little she-ass goes and kneels. It just, and Mary and Joseph shed tears. And then, and Mary, just by herself, it says, was doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, guys, if you don't know what the Assyrians were, if you read back to the first days that we were doing,
I also put a link in there.
Because Mary came from that line. Mary, Anne, they all came from the line of the Assyrians, and they were very, very pious, holy people. They were like a special tribe, a very holy people of those days. So they talk a lot about that, about what they normally did and their rituals and everything, which is very interesting. So if you want to go back to the first days that we did the readings, you'll get that.
Yeah, and look in the link as well. But yeah, it gives a little bit more on the videos. It talks a little bit more about them. So they're gazing sweetly upon her, but then as Mary gazed upon the child, the deep conviction stole upon her that it had come to earth to suffer. So, I remember my daughter saying, I don't know if I'll get my sons circumcised. I said, well, you have to. I said, they'll be different in the locker room, and, the germ factor, and, it's not something that we have to do according to the Bible, but I told my daughter, you have to, because otherwise I know men that haven't had it done and they're ashamed and embarrassed about it. And yes, it's painful. So I thought, here he's arranging the circumcision, and Mary's thinking and looking at the baby. So I'm thinking, I remember when they had to come and get my kids, and I saw the mold that they were going to put my baby in, and I stood outside the door. I couldn't, you couldn't go in, and just hearing my baby scream when they were doing it, both times, I remember both boys. It was painful, but I knew it had to be done, and it was hard. So I imagine Mary was thinking, he's arranging that, and she's thinking he came upon earth to suffer. And where does it start? Immediately with the circumcision. So, and then it reminded her of, see, this is why an artist should really do a real rendering of her
visions.
Yeah, because look here, and maybe artists they just haven't mentioned, because there's a lot that it says, it reminded me of a vision I had in an earlier period where I'd been shown Jesus while still in his mother's womb from the moment of his birth had suffered. When you think about it, there's a lot of like icons and things like that with the baby in the womb. You can see the baby in a little circle, so there are pictures like that. And I wonder if they get it from her visions. Why would they do that? Maybe maybe that apparently this book has had, like you said yesterday, and I had that posted from the beginning, that the Passion of the Christ movie that we all saw, that was like one of the biggest movies watched.
And I'm sure other movies were also that we're not really that knowledgeable of, but yes, I would imagine this would be part of every Christian movie's review of, like, getting information and getting as much that's out there, so it would be as close to original and historically correct as possible. And this would be a big part of it. I mean, it's been approved by the church.
Which is weird, because even though we all saw the Passion, and I read that article after I agreed to do this book, but when you wanted to do this book, I'm like, oh, is this one of those other visions that hardly anybody's heard, and it's just weird how this should be common knowledge, and maybe we're helping it be common knowledge if people are watching, but it was not common knowledge, like, because even though I saw the Passion of the Christ and listened to articles and interviews, I didn't know it was based on this. So I just think that is so interesting. And here these paintings might have been paintings that artists have done. I guarantee you artists since that time have read this to get a picture that they wanted to do. So I just wish that we had a book that, like this book that I got, that said it's based on her visions, but it doesn't, first of all, it's black and white. Second of all, the paintings are not, and drawings, really, a lot of them are black and white drawings, are not that impressive. So I don't know. I just think that someone should, an artist should do a real book based on each one and go according to the visions, like this. It's put in order. I think an artist should do that. I think it would be the greatest work of their life, and it would be sold, Kim. So anyway, and it might give you a longer life, because God might want that mission to be fulfilled, and he might say, I don't care how old this person is when they start, I'm going to give them the years to finish. Because God can do that. He can suspend our life.
Anything is possible with God. Anything.
He can suspend our life if he wants.
I know. I was thinking about the mystery yesterday of the Great, please don't turn off the light. I'm reading. Thank you. I was listening to Catechism in a Year, and they're talking about death and stuff, and I'm thinking, Isaiah 55:8-9, one of my favorites, because to think of how it's going to be when you get your bodies back after you've been in a grave and you're like bones, your flesh is gone, but everything's possible with God. We are promised our bodies back. And then I was imagining in my head, I wonder what form of my body I'm going to get. Hopefully it's a younger one.
Well, wait a minute. Let me say something. That the near-death experiences.
What do they say about that?
People say they see their grandmothers, they see everybody, and even though they know this is my grandmother, their grandmothers are like about 30 years old. So, you're going to get your 30-year-old body back.
Thank you, Lord. I like my 30-year-old body. One of my best.
Oh, I think the 20s we were at our best. I look at
I think 30.
I look at my picture of myself holding my Joe at 2 years old that he has posted of me and his father with him, and I was skinny, and I'm like, oh, I remember.
Yeah, but we're not gonna see each other as skinny and big. We're not gonna have that that mindset of trying to be perfect. Our mindset's gonna be the bad stuff's going to be gone. The material stuff,
but
physically,
that's why we're not going to be, that's why we're going to look our best. And I looked best. And, then, I mean, I was still thin in my 30s, but, I was still, thin in my 30s, but I was,
Yeah, I used to model, girl. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I had children, but in my 30s, but before, my kids were, I had my first son at 19, my second son at 22, and then Elizabeth at 37. So, but I wasn't, I wasn't fat. I gained only 35 pounds with Elizabeth. With my boys, I gained like 70 pounds, like huge. They must have been hungry or something. So, but I'll take that. I'll take 20s or 30s, either one. So this was interesting. So it said, I saw under the heart of Mary a glory, and it was a bright shining child. And you see artwork depicting that. So I really do think. And she says, and as I gazed upon it, it seemed as if Mary were hovering over it and surrounding it. I beheld the child growing in all the torments of the crucifixion inflicted upon it. It was a sad and fearful sight. I wept and sobbed aloud. These visions, I told you I had a vision, and it took my breath away. It's like one of the most important times. Like, how your kids are born, those days are like the most important days of your entire life. That's how it was with these things that happened. I had the vision, I had dreams. Each of those days were like as important to me as the births of my children. So, and I remember I couldn't believe that God was speaking to me, because I asked him for a sign, and he gave me literally a rainbow over the Walmart that I came out of. That I asked for a sign, and I was driving to the Walmart just begging God for the sign. When I went in the Walmart and I found the picture, and when I came out, there was a rainbow over it. But before I was going and I was asking for a sign, I saw a bird, and then I went in, saw the picture, came out, saw the rainbow, and literally my breath was taken away. And I was like, oh my God, God is talking to me. Like, it was the weirdest experience. Like, that is like, after my kids, that moment in my life is the moment that it's even higher than my kid's birth. You know what I mean? It's like, think about it. So I just remember that whole day. I just imagine that. And the weirdest thing was, after that, it poured down rain. Now, a rainbow usually comes out after. So I don't know if rain happened earlier in the day, because I don't remember. I only remember when I had the vision. And then after the vision, I was like, oh, and now it's raining and pouring. Like, everything was just like I was awestruck. So here she's having these visions all along. I mean, no wonder she was in bed with her head wrapped. I mean, I was awestruck at that one thing. And then I just went on with my life. Like, it's weird that it didn't just keep coming up in my mind, because it didn't. I was dealing with so much stress. I was going through a real battle and trial at that time. But it was a consolation, a moment of consolation. After that, the battle did get more peaceful. I was still scared and anxious, though, because I was not fully trusting God. When we're anxious, we are not fully trusting God. Always remember that. When you're anxious, you're not fully trusting God. And the priest told us at actually, and you get one you sign up on the sheet for a time of spiritual direction. So when I was in spiritual direction, he told me, you'll know when a demon is there because it is when you have your temptations, because that's what demons do. You don't have to be afraid of them, which I already knew that. But what is a demon's purpose? He said, to tempt you to overeat, tempt you to overindulge, tempt you to overspend. And guess how many times since he told me that, when I've had temptations and I can resist them now, because I know now that it's from the devil. When you know something is from Satan, I'm like, oh no, you're not winning this battle, because I'm the one here with the will. So because of hearing that in the spiritual direction moment, I am handling my temptations better. And he said, the best way to fight demons, he said, is fasting. So I said, well, I do that. I do it twice a week. I do it. You're supposed to do it Wednesday and Friday, according to the church. But I do it. I started with just Fridays, and I only drink water. And then I did Fridays and Mondays. I don't just fast on a small meal. I don't have any meal. It's a 100% water. But it
Wow, God bless you for that, man. I haven't been able to do that.
Took me a long time though, Jeanette. I told you I started with just apples and water in the beginning. I would fill up my stomach. I said, this is what I put in my image. The apples were sponges and they were filling my stomach. They were soaking up the water and filling my stomach. So I would eat as many apples, and little by little I ate less and less apples, and I naturally was able to do it with just water. So, and now I do it without thinking. And the priests all do it. They all do Fridays. I don't know if they do Wednesdays, but I don't have a problem with it anymore. Now, I did not fast when I was there, because it was a 4-day thing, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I did not fast then because I knew I was under more stress of having to, we had to walk back and forth to the chapel. Felt like all we did was go back and forth. We had a talk here and we had to pray up there, and then we had to come back for a talk there. I mean, we were just running back and forth. It was crazy. But so I knew I was under more stress. I was in a social situation, which I'm not, good with. I'm not, I am a stick to myself. Jeanette has been the one. I told Father John that you have helped heal me so much, because you kind of brought me out. And it's true. Because you kind of brought me out of my house. It's like, okay, we're going to movie. Okay, let's meet here. Okay, come up. Let's go do the rosary. Remember in the beginning, we used to do it at your house. I used to come up. Yeah. So, because until we figured out, and then your daughter helped us figure out how to do it live on Facebook. So because we kept trying and we were failing, and we were spent hours. Remember how many
hours? Didn't give up. We didn't give up.
You remember how many hours it was taking us, and we could not figure it out. And then finally we got your daughter to show us, and she was so annoyed, remember?
Oh yeah. You know how our kids try to get our kids to help us with
kids
technical stuff. They do, but oh my God.
I was the same way with my mom, teaching my mom how to use the iPad and all. It was so frustrating. I'm like, Mom, I'm telling you the same thing over and over again. That's what my kids were doing to me. And I'm like, you get the same crap back, and
it comes back to you guys. So.
Yeah, and it gets you before. But anyway, so yeah, so here she is, hovering over this vision that she's seeing, and she wept and sobbed. And I'm telling you, I know what it feels like to have a vision, and it's such an awe-struck moment. So I can imagine she did sob, because here she was seeing the Son of God that is about to suffer, and is already suffering in her dream. There is no time. So, but I just thought it was interesting that she's seeing these forms around it, beating it, scourging it. And then she said that the children were doing it. It's like every one of those people that did beat and crucify Christ were once small children. So that's what she was seeing, I believe, their soul. And then what does the child that's hanging on the cross in her vision say? All this did I suffer from my conception until my 34th year, when my passion was outward consummated. So he's telling her, and because she's seeing a child on the cross, and she's, she actually is seeing a vision, because if you, like they say with your enemy, look at your enemy and imagine them as a small child. Well, in her mind, he's innocent. Who's innocent? A child. So she's seeing this adult man who is a child on the cross. She's seeing a child on the cross suffering. And I think it's symbolized innocence, So she says the exact time when Christ died. The Lord died when he was 33 and 3 months old. And that's right before Easter. So it makes sense, because he was born in December, right? And
Yes.
And Easter is in early April generally. So,
well, I don't know if he was born in December.
No, they say nope.
Really?
They say
because I thought
nope.
I thought they didn't know the exact date, and they just made it December. Okay, then you're right. Okay.
No, there's even a movie about the star.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, that and even Taylor Marshall, that's where I know certainly, because he brings up all the things of why. And so it only makes sense that he died at 33 and 3 months, because Easter is 3 months after Christmas, Christmas. So, and that's like the most holy time in our liturgy, in our time period. The Advent, most important, all the way after to Easter, and then to Pentecost. Remember what we heard on our homily at Easter when we went to Natalie's church? And he said the most important besides Christmas is Pentecost. So we're still in that Easter season. If you go on like Annunciation's webpage right now, they say Happy Easter season. We are still in that. That's what.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still in that until Pentecost. So anyway, even though I think, doesn't it say ordinary time, I think, for a short time, and then it goes back? Yeah. But either way, it's still considered the Easter season. So that kind of was surprising. So you see how the church lives out the liturgy of the word, the liturgy of the Eucharist. All of that is based on this time, over and over, because like Saint Teresa of Avila with when she had her ecstasies, and she shows the mansions as going in spiral, and she talks about the spiral. What does a spiral do? It goes deeper and deeper. That's the year. Every liturgy we relive, we go deeper and deeper and get closer and closer in our lifetime, in our journey, is a spiral. I remember my mom having the dream of the spiral, and she gave my daughter on her first birthday. She took her to the beach because I had to work. So she took my daughter to the beach her first birthday, and they found a little spiral, and I had that shell for years, and I gave it to my daughter. I don't know if she still has it, but it was the spiral that my mother gave her on her first birthday. And she had that dream about the spiral, and that's what Saint Teresa of Avila says, closer and closer. And I keep trying to bring my daughter closer and closer, because in your 20s, you're not thinking of God, you're thinking of worldliness, so so it was just interesting to that she puts it like this. And then it says, go and announce it to men. Well, she's like, well, how do I do that? Her book. Little did she know her visions would be put into a book, and the biggest movie ever about Christ would be based on her. So she's like, but how can I announce it to men? That's what you're doing, honey.
See, when we go to heaven, we'll see the people that we have touched when we think we're just doing nothing, but we really aren't. Just by being kind and living the gospel instead of just reading it changes people's lives. And you just don't know because you're busy doing your own thing. But if you do it correctly, you're setting an example for the people you touch. And it's a big thing. It's a big thing. I mean, Mother Teresa says, start with one person at a time, you know.
Bloom where you are.
Yeah, and then she says something about little, also Little Flower says it. I forgot the exact words. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but Mother
Written in many
Teresa,
places.
Mother Teresa held the dying unwanted in the streets that were gushing with bacteria. She would hold them and hug them and love them until they died. They would pick them up. The sisters would pick them up in their disgustingness and take them and hold them and hug them. She would stay with them if they were close to death in the street and just hold them as they were dying. The love. And little did we know, in Be My Light, she talks about her desolation. She was at the highest of, we always think, well, why is God making me suffer? And why, blah, blah, blah. She was putting herself in that, Mother Teresa. And she was holding these disgusting people as they were dying, which I think it's so interesting that she's one of your favorites and you're so afraid of death. So I think when you're on your deathbed that I think there's a reason why Mother Teresa has come to you. They say our saints choose us, and I think she chose you to kind of help you with that at some point. So I just think that's interesting. And then here, look at this. She saw Jesus as a newborn child and how many of the children that went to the crib ill-treated the infant Jesus. The mother of God was not there to protect the child. The children went with all kinds of switches and rods and struck the baby. This is in her vision until blood flowed, because she was seeing each of those people that did that as innocent children. I believe they symbolize that. And then the child meekly extended its hands before its face. Christ as a baby was putting his hands. This is hard to imagine.
Yes. Oh my
Because
gosh.
he's trying to ward off the blows, and the smallest children were they struck, and the most maliciously, and then the parents twisted and wrapped the rods for them. You know what that means? That symbolized the cruelty that they were exhibiting was rooted in their parents, because of how their parents brought them up. They gave them the weapons to be cruel, which when you think about it, it's symbolizing our parents help form us.
The importance we have. Yeah.
Yes, they help form who we are and our ability to be kind. And there's a particular person I'm thinking of, and I'm like, that's why she's like she is, or the person I'm thinking of. They were not taught to be loving and kind, and so that's what she's symbolizing in this particular vision, because I'm thinking, why would children be beating the baby Jesus? It's symbolizing their innocence, and that they were taught that by their parents. So she just gives so much in her visions, because there's so many. I just think it's overlooked or something. Like, some artist has got to do a book of each of these, because they're just so striking. When we're going through this, Jeanette, I don't know anyone that has done this with this book. It's going to take us another 10 months, but we're going through it like the Vatican went through it with a fine-tooth comb, without any education or understanding our own. We're just, we're pouring over this.
And look how much we've learned in just 36 days.
Right?
I mean, I feel like I'm having these visions as I'm reading it. So she's sharing her her visions with the world, and she's showing them
So lucky to get it.
her eyes were so blessed.
Right. And I talked to Father John about this at the retreat, and he doesn't like, of course he's heard of this book, but he never read it, he said, and he doesn't know that much about it. And I said, well, it's helping me understand the Bible. He said, I don't know how it would help you understand the Bible. And I said, because each of the vision, I said, I'm taking each one and rooting it in where. So I don't think he really got it, but I'm going to tell him more about it. But anyway,
You should send him one of the videos of hers, because guys, she also has videos on YouTube, and they're amazing.
No.
They're really amazing.
Yes,
Because
he's
like,
so busy. He's so busy. He told us how.
oh yeah.
Apparently they had a this Opus Angulorium. They have a new facility now, and there's a picture of it. It's like with a courtyard in the middle, and they had just moved in there. And he described to us that Father Wolfgang, who is I guess the leader of the Opus Anglorum, I guess he's the director, and how he hasn't even been there yet, and they all moved in, but he hasn't moved in. And he was talking, and they're all constantly on airplanes going. They're going to Rome, they're going to different states to present this, their opus, remember what the word opus means, their life work, opus.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I didn't remember that.
I know that is, remember that movie, the opus of Mr. and he had the child who was deaf or something. It was a Jewish guy. He was.
Oh yeah, that was a really good
Jaws.
movie.
Yeah, he was the guy in Jaws. I can't remember his name. I think he was the guy in Jaws. But anyway, I'll put the link in there. Hopefully I remember to watch this. So yeah, that's what I was thinking of. But anyway, so here are the children. And then when it was about to strike the child, the rod snapped back and fell upon itself. And I knew several of the children, so she knew some of them from her other visions, I guess. How else would she know them? So they went on boasting of their fine clothes, but I stripped them and whipped some of them. In her vision, they're in these great clothes. It's symbolism of materialism and people with the wrong values that value the material world instead of, So what does she do in her vision? She strips them and whips them. I love it. She was getting vengeance back for our Lord.
So she's actually living in her vision. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. It must have been so hard for her.
I know.
Having these. No wonder her head, like you said, was wrapped. And it's like, could you imagine? She probably didn't know if she was living in what world she was really living in.
I know. And people could think it mental illness. People could think like she's lucky that they didn't just throw her in an asylum. I don't know if they had asylums back in the 1800s. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did.
So it's just like amazing that she was protected during all this. So it's just crazy. So here then she goes after that vision. She gets back the Blessed Mother. And the Blessed Mother's back with the child. The people didn't adore, they just gazed upon the child deeply moved, and they bowed low over it as kissing it. After all that, then she comes back to the other vision. And then it was the day Mary sat in her usual place with the infant Jesus on her lap, swathed in the hand. I guess, when you have a baby, that what happens, your mother comes so many weeks to help you. Most people, their mother comes and stays with them. So here they're in this cave for this extended period. Then Mary has linen that she's busied, and Joseph at the fireplace near the entrance of the cave. So they've made this cave a little home for how many weeks, we don't know, but it kind of, people are still bringing them food, so much so they're sharing it, according to this. And
she's so humble, she didn't try to go look for an inn after that. Like, okay, now that we got more time, we can move somewhere nicer with the baby. No, they just stayed there.
And just as you just said, all were received with rare humility and
yeah,
and gratitude. gratitude.
Mhm.
People were giving them things.
Oh, yeah.
Just like the women were silent, recollected, like, and then what do? What happens? What happened? And she sees the beast and says, "Oh, you good beast." I just thought that was funny. And then two married women with three little girls, 8 years old. Like, she sees very specific things. They came in obedience to a call more miraculous than had received. So people are having these visions and being told to bring them gifts. Like, they're having visions from God telling them to go and see. Like, because these are, like you said, very pious people. And and what does Joseph do? He welcomes them humbly. They bring presents and their grain and fruits, and then triangular gold leaves on which is stamped like a seal. And she says, strange, it looks like the representation, the eye of God. Like, what do we have on our dollar bills? A triangle with an eye. And I just think that this is in America. I mean, I can't even, like, it's just like there's so many symbols here that are this material world, that it's just crazy. So here these kids come, they're deeply impressed. Mary talks to them, and she knew all things. She clearly says Mary and Joseph knew, because she knew she didn't have sex, so she knew that this was real. She remembered the angel coming to her. Even though she knew all these things, in these humility, she casts her eyes down. She remains like, oh. And then what does she see? She sees in this vision a flash of lightning, like the truth, a ray of unsullied light pierces through and through. That's because she's perfectly pure, perfectly innocent, full of the Holy Ghost, without any reflection. She thinks nothing of herself. No one can resist her glance. The Son of God came through her body and out through the light, So she has this glow, like Moses when he came down the mountain and his face was sunburned from looking at Christ. You know how they have it in the movie? Same thing with her. Christ just came through her. So no one can resist her glance, Mother or Anne Catherine Emmerich says. No one can resist her. She just had the body of God go through her. Like, ah. So then she sees Anne's maid and an old man servant coming from Nazareth. So look, we're wondering, where's Anne? She sent help. Remember, they had money. Anne had money. And she sends help. She sends maids. It's like sending gifts to her daughter after the baby. So the maid was a widow and related to the Holy Family. She brought all sorts of necessities from Anne to Mary. We're like, well, what happens? Your mother comes. Here she's bringing from her mother. So it's just like each little thing, like she couldn't dream all this up in her world. Like, the church checked each thing with each historical fact. Like, wow. And what happens? She sees the spies of Herod come from Bethlehem, because the rumor sets afloat that the miracle had taken place. They met Joseph in front of the crib cage, exchanged a few words from him, and left him with a contemptuous smile at his humility. Like, they were laughing at St. Joseph. We hear nothing of St. Joseph. Even in this vision, he's quiet, humble, and simple, and they're laughing at him. Just like we have in our life, as you always say, Jeanette, we will experience persecutions in our life. People will laugh at us for it. Joseph is the most blessed and he's humble and simple, because he knows the truth. When you know the truth, you don't have to prove anything. You know the truth. So we have to remember that when people are attacking us, there's no reason to get emotional. Just let them think what they want. You don't have a license on God, and you don't this and you don't that. We know the truth and you don't. So we do, because we know the truth and you don't, because you wouldn't be acting this way if you did know the truth, because then you would be being a Christian and you're not. So it's like, you always have to remember that when you're getting persecuted, those exact things. You know the truth, that person doesn't. Don't live in this world. Don't worry about what they're trying to prove. You do what you know is right, according to God's law, according to his will. You unite your will with his will. So that's all. I was just, it's like, I can't believe they're laughing at Saint Joseph. I like want to feel insulted, and I have to remind myself, nope, we don't do that. We just move forward. So what's happening? No one took an interest in what's going. The crib clave is retired very pleasantly. No one from Bethlehem went there. The shepherds, there's duties called them there. No one in Bethlehem took interest. The strangers, the city was all alive, buying and selling, cattle being bought. People paid their taxes. They were there in numbers of pagans. Then when we got to, wait, let's see. First this, the apparition of the angels. She had an apparition of angels around the cave. She sees all this beauty that the world is going around. And what does she see around the beautiful cave? Angels guarding it. What do angels do? They're messengers and they're guards. So what does she see? The wonderful apparition of angels, soon noisied among the dwellers, but they were keeping that peace. You know, when you have a baby, it's such a special time. Like the first few days feel so sacred. And it's because you're touched by God. Can you imagine they're touched by God in such a more way than you even were after the birth of your children? People that don't have children, they may not realize this, but when a woman has a child, it's all she can do to get herself into a shower. And the days just seem to zoom by. Everything seems so huge. Your time is out of proportion. Right, Jeanette? Do you remember each of your birth? It feels like it's such a weird time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're going through this. And what are the angels doing while the world's going on around them? They're standing there.
They're singing.
They're standing there in her apparition, protecting the Holy Family from all that stuff. And all the hospitality, God sending these people with visions to bring them gifts to make them. And what does she see? Remember the people that were hard-hearted? She sees the hospital keeper of the last inn first sending presents by a servant and then coming himself. Are these the people that were hard-hearted? Did God open their hearts and bring them? I don't know. I saw also the good wife of the man who had been so cross to Joseph. So these are the people that were hard-hearted. God opened their hearts and said, look what you did. And maybe that was part of their, how we sin and we recognize later. That's what God is revealing to them, their sin. So they were very much affected. So she's seeing all the people that shut the door on them in the cold while she's about to have this baby. They're all coming and conscious of their sin suddenly. So then a relative of Joseph and the father, who at the crucifixion of Christ presented a strip of linen to him. So look at this. Joseph was very kind to him. His relative had heard from people of Joseph's wonderful situation. So rumors are just flooding through these villages, and here he brings them gifts, this relative of Joseph. Remember, he said, when we go to Bethlehem, we're going to be treated right. And we're thinking, oh no, you're not. Well, they didn't treat him right but in the end, they all brought him gifts. So maybe he knew this from that. But Joseph would not accept anything. And then this, I'm thinking, why did he pawn this she-ass for money? And now I realized, after listening to what they were talking about, those guys were coming and talking to him to get his taxes. He had to pay his taxes. So he redeemed the she-ass. That's why the she-ass was sent along with to lead the way, and it was to pay their taxes. Because otherwise, they're going through this beautiful time. So God, in his wisdom, sent this she-ass that would pay for their taxes. He redeemed for the
How
same.
did the Shias pay for the taxes?
He pawned the Joseph. It says here he.
Oh, he pawned it. I missed that part. I didn't read that.
But look, we just read it. But look, with the understanding that she would redeem. You know, when you pawn something, you can go back and get it. And
so with all the gifts from the Magi, he was able to get the ass back, I would imagine.
exactly. No. This is after he got all that. He had to get that money. His taxes must have been high because
the gold and everything didn't I guess suffice. Was it enough?
No, he had to get the money. So after that, Mary, Joseph, and the maid, after I guess they paid their taxes, Mary, Joseph, and the maid who were standing in front celebrated the Sabbath in the crib cave. A lamp with 7, remember, numbers are very important.
Yeah.
And in fact, Father John mentioned that about the 8th day is the circumcision. That's why, because it's a new covenant. And remember, 8 is in the symbol of eternity. So God, and that's how Jews were very focused. So what is put there? A lamp with 7 wicks was lighted upon a small table covered with red and white, lay with prayer rolls. So here they were worshiping, and they had their own little temporary altar there. You know, everybody should have a little altar at their home. I have my little altar. Everyone should have their little altar. And that's what they had, this little temperate. So then the numerous eatables were they had so many, they even gave to the poor and handed out, she said, for the entertainment of others, because they had so many visitors coming. So what did they have to do? They had to, everybody brought gifts and they had to feed their visitor. What do you do as a host, Jeanette? You always offer me your tea, your hibiscus tea. And Jeanette's hibiscus tea. And then finally, Natalie bought us all, she bought a huge one, and then she divided and let us each pay like $6 for it. It was so kind of her. Now we all can have Jeanette's hibiscus tea, because what do? Because Jeanette hosts us. Now we have to get back to our doll making. Yeah. And there's one lady.
And we got to start our quilt. I started it actually.
We got to start that, Jeanette. You should, all right, I'm going to start.
I got everything ready. I started already for.
All right, I'm going to get a big paper. You know what? I'm going to get a big paper and start drawing mine out then. Okay. Because I know I know the symbols that are going to be in mine. Anyway, so we're in case you don't know, we're making a quilt for Jeanette's daughter's wedding, and we only have so much time. So we're getting started on those. And I'm going to draw mine out. So I'll put in there the link of how to make an American quilt and how I got Jeanette to stop making for her son and do for her daughter, who had been asking her for a quilt, and she starts making one for her son. I said, no, stop. You got to get to your daughter. She's about to get married. And I showed her that movie because she's all focused on her son. I'm like, stop, your daughter. So I got her focused on it. I showed her the movie. She showed it to her daughter. They're all doing it. And when my daughter gets married, Jeanette, you're going to be helping me make a quilt, because you're going to know what to do by then. Because
I hope.
Because and I want a lot of symbolism in it. Yeah, you're going to learn a lot on your daughters, so you better help me with mine.
Oh yes.
I need you. I need your machines and all.
Of course.
Anyway, so everyone should do that, and yeah, and and prayers for Natalie. Her baby is
Sammy's they can't figure out what's wrong with him. So she's there. She was there yesterday, and she's there today to do ultrasounds, I guess, to see what's wrong with Sammy. And his little face is so cute.
Oh no, I didn't.
So yeah. I don't know. I don't think you're in our group on Messenger. We should add you somehow. I don't know how to do that. I gotta ask Natalie, because she needs to add Jean too. I don't think Jean's on it.
But Jean can't, remember, because of her phone.
No, this is Messenger. This isn't the group text. This is Messenger.
Yeah, but I hardly check. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for me on Messenger. I can't because I
Yeah.
get so many thousands of messages.
Well, I try to make sure that everybody that doesn't do that gets what's going on, but sometimes I get busy and I don't do it, and I'm like, oh no, I didn't tell them.
It's okay. You're doing the best you can.
Okay.
So anyway, so here they're sharing they're hosting things and this white jelly. Ew, that sounded weird.
Yeah.
But the Assyrian women, they got the meal ready for Joseph to engage the priest for circumcision, because they also, you have to give them a little bit of money, when in the Jewish custom you give money and gifts to the priest coming to do your circumcision. So maybe that's why. Maybe it wasn't about taxes that he got that money. Maybe it was to pay the priests for them to come out, the Shias money. Maybe it wasn't taxes. Maybe it was to pay these priests. So the partition that Joseph had put up was removed and ground spread with carpets in for this passage near the crib cave, and the place for the ceremony was prepared. Boom, that chapter ends, and tomorrow we do the circumcision. So everything we're seeing is preparing for this circumcision. This is all preparation, what we just read. And just after days, so this is within 8 days, they're still in the cave. We can gauge the time because in Jews, they have to do the circumcision on the 8th day. And when I download the MP3, I'm going to let you listen to, Jeanette, from our talks from our thing. You're going to hear about that it being an early circumcision, being an early pointing to the new covenant. So he talks a lot about covenants in our thing. You're going to love it.
Yeah, and I like the idea that you told me about our angels, that our guardian angels look like us. I'm like, whoa, that's so funny. I didn't know that. Our guardian angels look like us.
Yeah, because Jeanette and I had to sell the idea of the guardian angel consecration. Now Jeanette was right in. I'm at the thing and I'm calling Jeanette. Jeanette, do you want it? She's laughing at me because I'm whispering. She's like, "Oh, Henrietta can't be quiet." She had to call me because I was like,
silent retreat, guys. She was on a silent retreat.
I wanted to tell him that I had another person and I knew you would want to do it. So I wanted to get your book, and I could only get the book because he only had just enough books and there was one more left, and I wanted it to be yours because I didn't want you to have to call an order.
Oh, thank you.
Jean has to call an order. I brought yours right to your house and put it on your porch. Everybody wanted more books, and I was the only one that got the extra one for you. So that's why I had to call you. So I'm like, I gotta call Jeanette. Jeanette, this is the book. I'll put the link in there because you have to get an application. So I took a picture of the application. I sent it to her, and I had to fill out the application for her and put her, not her signature, but I wrote. And so he accepted that. I said, I just talked to Jeanette and she definitely wants to do it. So he said, okay. So he let me take, then there was one more book. I wanted to get it, but someone else, she decided to sign up. So I was like, darn it, I was going to get that other one for Natalie. But I didn't know for sure if Natalie would want to do it because she hasn't even called, and I don't think she even watched our thing. So I don't know if she's going to do it. But
did you send it to her?
I did. She didn't answer.
Well, if she's watching this right now, she'll
not watching. So
I hope she sees these because they're so interesting.
She does not.
She's busy. She's very busy.
Yeah. So we have Jean, and you said Sue talked to you about it, right? On her way to the airport. So we have Jean.
Yeah, Sue wants to do it. Yeah, Sue wants to do it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the lady from the retreat that also went with us, that was in our classmate, Andrea, she's a doctor. Alexandra. Yeah, that's what I said. Did I say Alexander? What did I say?
I think you said Andrea.
Did I say? Oh, okay. Sorry. Alexandra. She was wonderful. It was so nice. We went and got water, and I got it in my trunk for my kids. I got water, salt, blessed by Father John, and then the oil. And you had to open all of them. And these nice guys opened all of hers for her.
Yeah,
Anyway,
she's very holy and she's very pious. She's really one of those people that fit right in to the, the today's saints, today's disciples,
and she told him, she sent us something in our group message yesterday. This French,
Oh,
um,
I saw it. It was very good.
I watched the whole
Yeah,
thing all the
it
way
was
to the
very
end. And
good.
guess what she did right at the end? She went around to the whole crowd. This is, sorry guys, this is a nun, Sister Judith Miriam. She's a French nun because our friend Alexandra, who was in our class, who was the other one that went to the retreat with me, and the reason I found out about it was from her friend Solange, which Solange, I text her and she wants to stay in touch, but she's the reason why that I got to go to that, and I had no idea about it. So anyway, so she told me about this French nun. I'll share the thing. I shared it on my Facebook, but I watched the whole thing. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, but I made it go a little faster. Usually I can't listen to evangelical because it irritates my ear. I can't, but her singing did not. Her singing was beautiful. And then she started prophesying, and then she went around. Like we always think, oh, only the Protestants do that. No, she's a Catholic, because when she first sent it to me, I'm like, is this Catholic? Do I have another heresy? No, it was. And she came around and she touched people. The touch, the healing touch. And she went around to people and said to them, she knew. She said, "Your infertility, you're fertile now. You're fertile now." So I text Alexandra and I said, there's someone that I know that's having that. I got to touch I could just touch their hands, because I don't want, they have to agree to it. But this person, they're very private. So I'm just going to say, oh, I watched Mother Teresa, and I'm going to send them a link, and I'm going to touch her the same way, and I hope she gets the hint. And she said, you have to do it 7 times. So because I text her, I was like, oh my gosh, I watched the whole thing. And I said it didn't irritate my ear. And then I told her, that I saw it about the fertility. She said, you have to do it 7 times, and she's a doctor, and she still believes in that healing.
Oh,
So,
of course.
right?
I mean, how could you not?
Doctor,
Jesus did it and gave it to his disciples. Look at Peter. He did it. All these other,
some
and
doctors
how
though,
many are not written? How many are not written?
some doctors though aren't. But when you hear some of them say, I know God's working through me. Remember that picture I sent you for your daughter when she graduated nursing school? The picture of Jesus standing over the nurse. That's what a
Yes.
lot of doctors have described. A lot of doctors have described that they felt God working through them. And that picture reminded me, her daughter now works with little babies. Very stressful job. So we have to pray for Jeanette's daughter all the time, because she's, people have no idea how stressful nursing is. They have no idea the stress. So anyway, it was a beautiful reading today. Tomorrow we do the circumcision, guys. All today was leading up to the new covenant. So I can't wait to share with you, Jeanette. I won't be able to share it publicly, but friends who listen to this, there's so many, you'll be able to send MamaHensCatholicTeaching at Gmail. It's in here. I'll remind myself to make, when I get the talks, I can share this with my friends, and my friends watch this. I can't share it publicly, but you guys, yes. The weirdest thing, Alexandra just texted me just now.
Yeah, that's the Holy Spirit working, girl.
She just sent me, I'm
I
talking
got it
about
too
this,
because I'm in the group. Yeah.
and she just sent a session 2.
Yeah.
She didn't send
Wow.
this to my private. She sent this to our group
That's
one.
good. That's awesome. I love to listen to
That's
that.
the Holy Spirit, man. Oh my God, I gotta listen to that. This is so crazy. Anyway, Alexandra, you weren't listening because this isn't even posted yet. Like I told you this.
Well, you have to post this on her private too, so that way when you do it on YouTube, send it to her so she can watch it.
Let me tell you something. At the retreat, she kept ahead. She grabbed me. I didn't know what was going on. She grabbed me and she said, come on, we have to go get water. She said, I'm going to go get water in the sun. I said, can I come? She said, yeah. So she grabbed me and we went in her car. She knew just how to get there. She knew exactly what she was doing. I rode over with her. We got all this stuff. Then she knew when to pick it up. Like, she knew everything. Like, she's brilliant, but she's also very in tune with the Holy Spirit. This just proves it. She just sent this to me in our text. She can't be watching this.
Wow.
She can't be watching this because it's
Thank
not
you,
posted
Jesus.
yet.
Continue guiding us like this the rest of the day, please, Lord.
This lady is I'm telling you, this lady is a prophet. I'm watching anything she shows me.
Yes,
just like I
me
watch
too.
what you show me. Mwah!
Me too.
Beautiful. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you
Have a blessed
tomorrow.
day, guys.
Yes, we'll see you tomorrow. Send
Bye-bye.
an email. Bye.